Hey guys, it's luckily ASMR, and today's video will be a sort of mini guide to the Serbian Cyrillic alphabet. Since a lot of you guys have been asking me recently on maybe learning a bit of Serbian, learning something about Serbian, since I do tend to make a few Serbian videos at times, usually once per month. So I decided to make this sort of guide to how the letters in the alphabet are pronounced. This won't be how they're written, because that part is a bit less important, but I'll get into that once I start explaining everything. But in any case, I hope you guys do enjoy this type of content and that I do get you guys to learn some of this. I think before we start, I am not a licensed Serbian teacher. I am pretty bad at my own language at times. I know the basics as usual. I know how to use it. I've been using it for like 21 years already, and yeah, I'd like to think of myself as somebody that can at least somewhat give you the basics of the Serbian language, specifically the letters, since it's something that we learn in elementary school and even before. So without further ado, let me attempt to take you on a teaching journey. In any case, some of you may know what Cyrillic is. Most of you probably use Latin, the Latin alphabet 90% of the time, or if you're Korean or Japanese or Chinese or some other nationality that may not use Latin, you have your own sort of alphabet or curriculum. I forgot what its name is, but in any case, Latin is usually the most used in the world, but Cyrillic is also used heavily, specifically in certain Slavic languages, specifically like Serbia and Serbian-speaking countries, as well as Russia and parts of Turkey and certain Eastern Asian and those particular countries that are close to Russia specifically. Other than that, Cyrillic isn't that like worldwide, but it is still something to note. Specifically for Serbian, I won't go into the history and every detail about it, but I just want to talk about some facts that are pretty important to know when learning Cyrillic, or should I say Serbian, the Serbian alphabet. And something that's really important is that, for example, if you ever come to visit Serbia, we both use Cyrillic and Latin, unlike a lot of other countries which only use a single one. Cyrillic is the official one, which we use in documents and stuff, and it's really annoying when you have to, because most people just use Latin by default, because you use English 90% of the time in like the internet. So just writing in Latin when you can is pretty much easier. And Latin is in official use, so it is an official language, but it's like not as official as Cyrillic. Kind of a weird thing in the law, but it is what it is. And specifically, the Serbian alphabet is also used in Montenegro and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Besides that, it's also important to note that this Cyrillic alphabet is quite a bit different when compared to other Cyrillic alphabets, like for example the Macedonian, like the Russian, and others that have their own sort of alphabet, because we have certain letters that they don't, and they have certain letters that we don't. So that is also something to note. Now, the last important thing that I'd like to talk about is the fact that the Serbian language is one that is very unique, because it is spoken the same way that it is written, and it is read the same way that it is written. And that was the idea behind its original conception, which is why Serbian is basically the easiest language in the world to read if you know the letters themselves, because in every single sentence and word, every letter is pronounced identically to how it is usually. Serbian has a lot of other more complicated things, but at least the Serbian in its essence, is the easiest language in the world to read if you know the letters. And so since we'll be learning the letters today, once you learn these, you'll be able to read any text easily. You might not be able to easily make a sentence or properly 100% pronounce some of them, but you will definitely know how to read them. So without further ado, let us begin with the alphabet itself. I will put the alphabet here as certain parts are talked about, so you guys know what I'm specifically talking about. And we'll of course start out with the first letter of the alphabet, which is A, or in Serbian it is A. Now, the difference in these two, at least as far as the look goes, is pretty similar. It's pretty much identical, and besides like the lowercase letter A, but it's the difference in how you pronounce it is essentially how English speakers say ask. So the regular form is A, you just say A, but when you say ask, you say ask, so it's it's not A, it's so the letter A is in Serbian. Then next up we have B. B is quite a bit different when compared to Latin B, both in how it is written, because it is written in the way in which most of you don't know. It's two letters, the one that we'll be talking about next, which is V, are interchanged, so they swapped places essentially. So with B, you can see here how it's written. So it's definitely a bit different, but that is actually not the important part once again, because we're not learning how to write it itself. We're just focusing on reading the specific Cyrillic pronunciation, even if you're reading it in Latin. So in this case, B is pronounced as B. So it is B. It's not B, like it's essentially in Serbian B. There's the B plus E, and it's B. So it's B E. It's two. When you look at it from a Serbian perspective, it is two letters instead of one, like it is in the regular Latin alphabet as far as English goes. So it's B, and you can look at it as just like the word build. In the word build, you have B ild. It's not a B old. It's B ild. Build. So it's B. Now, that should be, once again, pretty clear. If you forget any of these and can't remember them, or you don't, or it's not easy for you to just remember it on the spot, which it probably isn't, definitely try and go back, try and remember some of these, then do it again a couple times until you get the hang of it. That is usually how it's easiest to do so. Or alternatively, you can also read something or listen to somebody speaking Serbian and then try and remember some of those, but we'll talk about that once we finish these. Now, let's go on to V. V is written in the way in which you guys know B to be written. So there's a bit of a difference there, at least in the Cyrillic alphabet, but it is still pronounced V. I mean, it's not pronounced exactly like that. It's pronounced V. So it's, with a lot of these, you have it's essentially just the purest form of that letter. So in A, it's A. It's not I like it sounds when you say A. With B, it's not B-E, it's B. With V, or should I say V, it's not V-E, it's just V. So it's essentially taking out the second part of most of these, for most of these letters at least. So it is pronounced V, and the best description that I can give as far as a word goes is Venus. In Venus you have V-Enis. It's not V. It is V in a sense, but since Venus is written as V-E-N-U-S, the E is essentially the continuation and the regular V. So if you hear something like veal or anything else that has V and then E, it sounds the same as when it does regularly when you just say the single letter, but it's actually V-E, so it's V-E-nus and not V-nus, if you get what I mean. I hope it's understandable. But yeah, let us continue on with the next one, which is G. G is also quite a bit different in its Cyrillic form. When written, it is essentially an L turned upside down, or a T without the left side, if you want to remember it that way. That is, I think, how I remembered it when I was a kid. But in any case, G is pronounced as G. Now this one is pretty particular because they don't really sound as similar as some of the other ones, G and G, because in the Serbian language, G sounds a lot more like another letter we have that we'll be talking about later on. It'll be near the end of this video, but in any case, G is G, and you can take this as it is in the word gladiator, G, gladiator. It's not gladiator, you don't say gladiator, you say gladiator. Similarly to the word glad, it is also a G and not a G. So it is G, gladiator, G. Next up we have the letter D. D is also pretty different in Cyrillic, as you can see. It's written quite differently, and the pronunciation is D. Now, the example for this one would be the word dead. You don't say deed, you say d, d. It's dead, d, d. So, d, or should I say D in the Cyrillic alphabet is d. Next up we have the letter J. Now we get to some of the harder ones. This one and like 4 others are the hardest ones because some of them don't have particular words which are equivalents in English, at least. There might be equivalents in other languages. For example, J is something that Italians have, but Americans don't. So in words like buongiorno and some others like giorno and like names like that have a J in them, they have J's in them, obviously, while Americans don't really ever use J in their own language. It just doesn't exist. The sound itself doesn't exist. So here we have J, and as I said, the best example I can give is buongiorno. So it's buongiorno, buongiorno. I know it's not the exact pronunciation that the Italians have, but it's also the closest thing that we have. But purely in itself, it is J, J, and it is often written as the Y, or should I say D and J. If you do not have a Serbian keyboard at hand, the D and the J is how it is usually written. Similarly to some other letters that can be written both as a single letter. You can probably see here that there is it looks like a D with a small I don't know how to call it. It's a my brain farted. With a straight line in between the part of it. It's even more different in Cyrillic, but in any case, it is J. Now let's continue on to another easier one, which is E. E in Serbian is pronounced as E. E. And the easiest way that I can give you an example of this is the word elevate. There you have the letter E, but it is not the elevator. It's not an elevator, it's an elevator. So in Serbian it is elevator, elevator. A word in Serbian that uses the letter E is something like ekologija, ekologija, e. It's pretty much the same. You can say ekologija or ecologia, and everybody will understand you. In any case, that is E. E is E. Now, let's continue on to the next one, which is another one that does not exist in English or in the Latin alphabet in general, and that is J. J is quite a unique type of letter because it is sometimes used in certain words within English, but it's not a letter in itself. For example, the word genre has the word je in it. It's genre. Je. This is one of the words that's similar to the G sound that you sometimes find, the different G sounds that you sometimes find in English. And in this example, the G in genre is je, exactly like it is in the Serbian alphabet. So it's je. The letter is je. Next up we have the letter Z, or should I say the letter Z? Z, not S. It's Z. Z. It's kind of hard to pronounce if you've never said it before. Z. But it's similar to S, as you can notice. And Z, the best example to give is the word easily, because you don't say easily. It's written easily, but it's not easily. It's easily. Easily. So it's Z. The letter Z is the Z in easily. And that's about it for Z. Next up we have the letter I. And the letter I is pronounced as E. Some of you may know that from the Friends joke where who is it? It's not Chandler. It's in any case he just says E really, really loudly. But yeah, it is E. An example for this is the word, or should I say the name Ian. You don't say Ian. Some people do say Ian. I think Canadians or somebody says Ian. But it's not Ian, it's Ian. So it's E, not I, it's E. And that is how it is pronounced in Serbian. It's E. Ian. Ian. Next up we have the letter J. J is completely different in Serbian. Absolutely completely different. And this is something that sometimes bugs me when having to read different languages. For example, because certain languages use J as Y or as E or some, and similar to the Y letter. But in any case, in Serbian, J is Y. 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 It's quite a hard letter to get used to. It's a letter that was taken from the Latin alphabet to be used in the Cyrillic alphabet, so we could have an easier way with making certain words that had to have separate letters for them. In this case, it is Y, and the best way, or should I say the best example to explain this is the word yellow. You don't say jello. I mean you do, but that's a different word. For the color yellow, you don't say jello, you say yellow. So it's yellow, yellow. So you do somewhat have the experience of saying the word. It is the letter. It's still kind of hard probably to say but just try saying yellow multiple times and you'll probably get the hang of it. Yellow, 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 y. Next up we have the letter K, and the letter K is pronounced as K. 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 Once again, the example for this one is a completely different letter. It's C. It's the C in calm, because you don't pronounce this psalm or psalm. You pronounce it as calm. K. Calm. K. Calm. That should be pretty understandable, I think. And once again, like the letter J, try repeating calm a couple times until you get the hang of the pronunciation for K. It's calm. Calm. Okay, that is 2/5 of the entire alphabet. So let us continue on with is my favorite letter, which is L, and in Serbian it is L. Just like my name is Luka, Luka, while in English it is Luke. It is still pronounced pretty similarly when you think about it. Luka, Luke. So it is actually the same pronunciation for L in Luke, as well as something like lion, L-ion, L-ion. It's not L-ion, it's L-ion. So, once again, repeat it a couple of times and you'll probably get the hang of it. Next up we have a harder one, which is one of the letters that came out of the joining of J, the letter J from Latin, and the Cyrillic alphabet, and that is L. L. We usually write it in Latin as LJ or LJ, and this one, similarly to others that have Y at the end, or some other letters that are sometimes written as two different letters in Latin, are ones that usually sound like a completely different letter once you say them together. So L-Y, since we already talked about J, which is Y, saying L and Y together, you get L-Y, 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 L-Y. So you get the sound of L. Unfortunately, L is basically non-existent completely in English. The best example, I can even call it an example, I could find is when people say bleh, bleh, like something is disgusting, so it's bleh, bleh. That's basically the best example that I have, and it's bleh, so it's L. There you have L, and that is literally the best. So the only way that you can essentially get yourself to pronounce it correctly is to first understand how to say the L and the J, so L and the Y, and then try saying them together. Try saying L-Y together, so L-Y, 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 L-Y. And at some point your tongue will just start coming up to your napes, and you'll just say L instead of L-Y, 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 L-Y. So the pronunciation is L. Okay, let us continue on with the next one, which is M, and M is pronounced as M, just M. And the best example I can give for this is something like minion. So in minion you have M inion, you don't have M inion, you have M inion. So the pronunciation is M, M inion. Pretty self-explanatory, pretty simple. Let's continue on. The next one is N, and N is pronounced as N, N. Now, N is something that is often actually found in English in words like neither or none and such, because you don't say N either, you say N either, N either. So it's neither, N either. So the pronunciation is N. But yeah, let's continue on. Next up we have Ñ, and with the Ñ is the other one that is connected with the letter J besides L, and Ñ is just N plus J, so it's N, Y. And once again, if you say it multiple times, one with one next to another, N, Y, N, Y, N, Y, N, Y, N, Y, N, Y, you'll end up getting to the Ñ. And so the pronunciation is Ñ, Ñ. The best example for Ñ doesn't exist. I literally could not find a single example for Ñ, because it's just not something ever spoken in English. There are examples in Russian, like у меня, because you say у меня, it's Ñ, у меня. But besides that, there aren't examples in English that I know of. I really tried finding ones, but I just couldn't find any. So just if you wanna try and try it multiple times, just as I said with the previous one, first learn N, then learn J, which is N and Y, and then try try saying ny, 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 ny. Next up we have the letter O, and O is pronounced as O, quite similar. And the best example for this is oak, because you don't say O. I mean, you do say oak, but you don't. Similarly to, I think it was Venus. In this example, you have O and A, so it's pronounced a lot like oak, like the regular letter O plus K. But in this example, it is O, or should I say O, ak, oak, 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 oak. So it's O, oak. So the beginning itself is the letter in the Cyrillic, so it's O. It's not O, it's O. It might be kind of hard to grasp, but try saying different words that have O in them, and try and dissect it into different parts. Something like object. Don't say object. Try saying object. 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 I think you should get the hang of it eventually once you try it out multiple times with some stuff. Next up we have the letter P, and P in a similar way to how B is completely different and it is written in a completely different way. P is also written in a completely different way, and besides that, it is also P. It is not P, it is P. And you may notice, if you know how the symbol of pi, the number, is written, it is quite similar to how P is written here. And as I said, P is pronounced as P. And once again, a good example of this is the word paper. You say P, aper. You don't say P, aper. You say paper, P, aper, P, aper. So you have two P's there. And it is paper, P, A, P, A, R, paper. Next up we have the letter R, and in the Cyrillic language, R is written as P is written in the Latin language. That might be a bit confusing, so don't really try and do that right now, because we're currently just focusing on how you pronounce these. If you guys want, I'll do a separate video in which we talk about how they're written, but as I said, it's not as important. Anyway, R is pronounced as R. R. It's like you feel your tongue vibrating when you say the word. It's R. 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 Kind of a unique letter now that I think about it. It's R. But R is best. The best example for R is rookie. It's not exactly R, rookie, but it's R. So it's the closest that I could come to R. But in any case, try repeating it multiple times. Just try making the R sound. It's like trying to imitate something that vibrates a lot. Just do that, and you'll eventually get to the R sound instead of the R. It's not R, it's R, just the second part. So this is another example where it's not with A. You had A, E, so like A was A. The Cyrillic A was the first part, and the second part was E, A, E, which is the Cyrillic E. But in this situation, you have R, where you have the Cyrillic A, and R as the second part instead. So it is kind of weird when you look at it, but it is still R. So definitely that is one that needs some getting used to, and it is often used as a vowel in Serbian, while it is not used as a vowel almost at all in the English language. Now let's continue with the next one, which is the letter S. And S, similar to how R is written like it is P, S is written like it's C, but it is pronounced as S. So S, 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 s. And the best example for this, for example, is the word stupid. You are stupid, stupid. You're not stupid, you're stupid, stupid. Also quite intuitive, so we'll just immediately go on to the next one, which is T. And the letter T is pronounced as T. And once again, the best example for this is the word Tetris, for example, or should I say the game Tetris, because it's T-E-T-R-I-S, not T-A-T-R-I-S. It is Tetris, T-E-T-R-I-S. So, try it out. And for example, in the word Tetris, when you try and say the entire word in Serbian, it sounds like as I just said it, so it is a good word to transition yourself from English into Serbian. So try saying Tetris and then try saying each of the letters once you've learned them as a separate part. So say T, E, T, R, I, S, and it ends up being Tetris, 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 T, E, T, R, I, S, Tetris. But yeah, let us continue on. Next up we have Ch. Ch is the brother of a J, as I like to think about it, because they're written similarly. Ch just has a squiggly end while Ch doesn't. But in any case, Ch is very weird to explain in a lot of ways, because once again, there's no equivalent in English. The best equivalent that you have is how some people say chicken. They don't say chicken, they say chicken, chicken. They don't say chicken, they just say chicken, chicken. Sometimes Koreans also say chicken instead of chicken. But in any case, ch is how it is properly pronounced. Ch, ch. And the easiest way that I can essentially explain this is try saying t, the letter T and J together. It's like t, 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 t. You'll end up saying t or t or t, but it'll be really close to saying ch, 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 t, t, ch, t, ch, t, ch. That is essentially the closest thing that the English language has to a ch. Next up we have the letter U, which is written quite a bit differently in Cyrillic, but once again, never mind that. It is pronounced as oo. It's not you, it's oo, just oo. And a great example of this is actually the word oops, because despite it being written with two O's, it is actually really similar to the letter oo, because it's oops, oops, and the letter oo in Cyrillic is pronounced oo. So oops is a great way to try and train yourself to say oo instead of you or under, because you in English is quite a bit different than it is in Serbian, and it's one of the vowels that's quite hard to probably get used to. But definitely try saying oops a lot of times, and you'll probably get the hang of it. Let us continue on to the last fifth of the alphabet, which is, or should I say, which starts off with the letter F. F is once again written completely differently in Cyrillic, and F is pronounced as f, 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 like fire, f, ire, f, ire. It's not F, ire, it's f, ire, fire, f, ire. Another pretty easy one, so try out fire if you want to try and learn F. Next up we have the letter H, and H is literally written like X in Cyrillic, despite it being pronounced as h, in a similar way to how it r rolls off the top side of your mouth. Just courses through your entire throat. It's like a coarse throat, essentially. It's h. And the best example that we have in English is the word heavy. 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 So just try saying the H in heavy completely separately from the and it is written completely differently. And as I said, it's pronounced as ts. And the best example of this, for example, is the word Tsar that you have for Russian rulers, and generally rulers that have the title of Tsar. So essentially, ts is ts, like ch is tia. That is how ch. That is how ts is pronounced as ts. So it's Tsar, 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 Tsar. Once again, pretty hard. Some of these last ones are probably the hardest, especially since most of them are ones that you've probably never pronounced yourself. So definitely, you're going to have to repeat them quite a bit to get the hang of them. But just like any other language, it's definitely worth the effort. In any case, let us continue on with the next letter, which is ch, a letter that doesn't exist in the regular English alphabet, and it is pronounced as ch, as I said, ch. And the best example that we have is the word chili. It's ch, ili, or chile, or anything that has ch is usually pronounced as ch, like match, scratch. A lot of words end with the ch in English, so it's not as hard as others because you've probably said it before. So it is ch, scratch, match, batch. What else? I actually had chili, China, and other similar types of words all have ch, which is essentially the letter ch in Serbian. Next up, we have the second to last one, which is quite the hard one, and it is j. J is essentially the letter that is the combination of d and j. So it is the combination of a letter that you don't know, a letter that you do somewhat know, so d, and a letter that you probably don't yet know. So once again, it's a situation where you first have to learn d, then learn j, how to pronounce j, so d, j, and then once you repeat it multiple times and try to say d, j, d, j, 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 d, j, d, j, you'll get to j eventually. And there actually is an example in English, which is the word badge. You don't say badge, and you don't say badg, you say badge, badge, and the j is exactly that letter. So definitely, if you once you master saying d and the j, try out saying badge, and you should have an easier time ending up and pronouncing the letter j. The letter j, badge. Okay. Now we have the very last letter, which is the letter sh. And the letter sh is, once again, a letter that does not exist in the English alphabet, but we do have quite a similar pronunciation to something like ocean, ocean, ce, in ocean, for example, is sh, o, sh, e, an, ocean, ocean, o, sh, n, ocean, ocean, ocean. So sh is the sh, or the s, e, a, s, c, e, a in ocean. So definitely try that out when you're learning it. In any case, that is it for the proper pronunciation of all of the letters in the alphabet. Definitely, if you want to learn all of these, go back through all of them that I just, or should I say this, or go through the specific ones that you may not have immediately remembered. Those that you did, try and pronounce them multiple times so you get the hang of them, and then try moving on to the harder ones until you finally get to this last batch right here, wherever it is. That is like the hardest. It is the f, h, c, ch, ch, sh. They're quite hard, I know that they are, but if you really want to learn it, definitely start out from the top with the a, b, v, g, d. Then you get the j, which is a bit harder than the rest, but if you know any Italian, you should get the hang of it quite fast. But But in any case, let's just do a recap of all of them. First, you have ah, ah. Then you have b. Then you have v, g, d, j, e, j, z, i, y, k, l, l, m, n, ñ, o, p, r, s, t, ch, u, f, h, c, ch, ch, sh. So if you don't want to go back all the way through all these 40 minutes of me talking about them, just you can go through these that I just mentioned right now, and you should get all of them how they're properly pronounced. So you can just try and mimic what I said instead of like trying those. But I do recommend trying and writing down some of the examples that I made, like ask, build, Venus, gladiator, chili, calm, lion, and so on and so on. So you do finally get the hang of these. Honestly, I hope this helped you out. If it didn't, I'm a horrible teacher. I'm sorry. I will never teach again. Just kidding. I will. But in any case, honestly, I do hope that that this did help some of you out, and that you can now have an easier time trying to learn both the alphabet and Serbian later on. I might continue this series with some like actual words after this, because this is quite an important part of that, because without knowing this part, you probably won't be able to pronounce certain words within the Serbian language that had letters like j, ž, ñ, l, ch, ch, sh, and h. Most likely, those are probably the hardest ones. So definitely, once you get the hang of these, and I'll probably do another one in like a month where we just learn the basic words. We won't be learning grammar. I won't teach you grammar because that's not, I'm horrible at grammar myself, so I can't teach that anyway. In any case, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in my next video. Ciao!